Disclaimer. This is an audiobook recording performed for entertainment purposes through fair use. I do not claim any of the text being read to be mine or written by me. This is Twisted by Laurie Halse Anderson. Warning. This story is not for children. It contains talks of abuse, violence, assault, both sexual and physical, drugs, alcohol, and suicidal ideation. Listener discretion is advised. The third Tuesday in September was hot and nasty. The windows on Yoda's gremlin were all rolled down, and it felt like the plastic seats were melting. As soon as we pulled out of the driveway, Hannah peeled off the shirt Mom had made her wear and revealed a scrap of fabric that was just barely keeping her boobs under control. Yoda drove up the curb and almost clipped the mailbox. Sisters should not have boobs. Or mouths. Hannah spent the whole ride yapping about how evil our parents were because they wouldn't let her dress the way that she wanted or pierce anything interesting or follow her favorite bands around the world. "Do you think Dad's being a bigger jerk than normal?" I asked. "How can you tell?" she answered. "No, really," I asked. She took a mirror out of her purse and looked at it while putting on lip gloss. Mom figures another 400 years of weekly therapy sessions and he might be able to feel something. Plus his job sucks. Mom said he might get fired. Why? I have no idea. She ran her tongue over her lips and Yoda hit the curb again. I yelled at him to stop staring in the rearview mirror. My sister had to find a different ride to school or we were all going to wind up dead. 22. Hannah wasn't the only semi-nude girl in school. It was like they had all gotten together and voted for a clothing optional day. They weren't completely naked, but they were showing so much skin that you didn't have to use your imagination. All over school, guys were walking into walls and open lockers and losing concentration mid-sentence, having to stop at the fountains to drink a gallon of water while they waited for their boners to calm down. As I stumbled from the front door to homeroom, I decided that these were the most poetic words in the human language. Camisole, strapless. Halter, low-rise, thong, belly shirt, peekaboo cutout, and spandex. It was awesome. Except that the girls are getting pissed. An almost half-naked hottie would strut down the hall, butt swaying side to side, top of her underwear peeking out of her shorts, hair flowing down her back, jewelry in her belly button, boobs spilling out of her top, big smile, and what would happen? Every guy she'd walk past would say something crude or whistle or pant or moan or follow her, and she'd get pissed. Well, duh. Before the first bell rang, most of the guys were semi-conscious with lust, and most of the girls were ready to slap someone. Mornings like this could almost make you love school. 23. Bethany was AWOL from homeroom. Chip wasn't, but there was no way I was going to ask him where his sister was. He was deep into his physics book, flipping back and forth between it and a handful of note cards. The rumor was that Mr. Milbury never let him bring home a grade lower than 95. If true, it would explain a lot. I took the longest way I could from my morning classes, but I didn't see Bethany anywhere. She'd probably heard about the clothing optional vote and decided to stay home. She was classy like that. Damn. Calc was incomprehensible. I could understand irrational girls and irrational parents, but irrational numbers? Numbers usually made sense, even the imaginary ones. I kept reading the page in my math book over and over again. The only thing that felt irrational was my brain. In gym, we learned that stretching was important, and that, again, for the record, the school was not responsible for any stolen items from lockers. Mr. Salvatore handed back my compare and contrast essay on Satan and God. It had a 0 on it and a "See Me" written under it in red pen and underlined. It turned out that he was serious about the whole summer reading stuff. I had 48 hours to read Paradise Lost and write an essay that proved it. Don't waste your money buying a piece of garbage from an online essay factory, Salvatore warned me. I could smell that junk a mile away. And do not waste my time on a first draft. There is power in revision. This is about time that you learn it. Oh, and have you heard of this thing called spell check? You should try it. 24. Must eat food. The lunchroom smelled like deep-fried fat and sounded like a packed football stadium. I bought as much food as I could for $2.50 and sat near the door. Must not think. My sister threw herself into the seat across from me. Do you think Calvin is hot? I'm failing senior year, Hannah. And I care? Seriously, do you think Calvin is hot? He's not my type. 2 of my friends think he's hot because he has a car. Can I have a bite of your cookie? She took the cookie before I could protect it. I need $5 too, because I lost my bet to Mandy Simpson. What was the bet? Whoever got asked out on a real date first. Some soccer player hit on her while she was at her locker. She's such a whore. She'll probably have the whole team by Christmas. She opened her lunch bag. God, that means I can't go out with any of them. Technically, you won. What? Yoda, Calvin, wanted to ask you out for weeks. He has? She munched on a carrot stick. Well, why doesn't he just ask then? He's afraid you'll say no. It doesn't matter. I don't want you going out with him or anyone else. Why not? Because you're my sister, you twit. Sisters aren't supposed to date. She rolled her eyes. Could you be any more ignorant? Tell Calvin I'll say yes. He's sweet and he has a car. And what is he, 17? Mandy's soccer player is only 15. Ha, I win. I consumed my cheeseburgers in 3 bites each. Hannah nibbled on her rabbit food and drank her water and my chocolate milk and yacked about guys and hot teachers and her new best friends and how they needed to go shopping. Her words came out fast as fully automatic machine gun rounds. She was making my ears bleed. I was still in shock because I had 2 days to read 500 pages of a poem. I pulled Hannah's lunch bag closer and munched on some celery. The door next to the cafeteria opened. The lunch monitor scowled. I watched chewing on a celery cud while Hannah's mouth flapped. The plastic knob of a crutch poked its way through the half-open door. Bethany Milbury hobbled in. I stared. Why was she here? Bethany never ate lunch with the humans. She went out to lunch with Michelle and Allison from the tennis team, or one of the boys who drove a brand new German sports car. Why was she here? She took a few wobbly steps. Even after a couple of weeks, she still hadn't gotten the hang of crutches. I leap over the table. Just as she slips on the grease-slicked floors, she falls into my arms and whispers, "Thank you, Tyler." As I carry her through the lunch line so she can buy yogurt for her, and fries and cheeseburgers for her hero, me. Everybody in the cafeteria stands and applauds. The lunch ladies are so moved they give us free cookies. "Hey, Bethany," Hannah shouted. "Over here." Bethany made her way over to our table. It was the closest to the door, after all. She smiled at my sister. She leaned the crutch against the table and put her hands on my shoulder. My shoulder. She gracefully sat next to me. She was wearing jean shorts that were short enough but not too short, and a pink t-shirt that said princess in cursive, and a candy necklace that I was desperate to nibble on. From every corner of the cafeteria, people were watching. "Oh, God, will you guys let me sit here?" Bethany asked. "It's too hot. I can't stand it. My armpits are blistered, I swear, and I can't take another step." I wanted to say something, anything, but by the time I got over the shock, she was deep in conversation with my sister, who I adored very, very much at this moment, about crutches and armpit pain. Besides, the wad of celery in my mouth was the size of a grapefruit. "I love that shirt on you, Tyler." Bethany lifted her left leg and let the bandaged foot fall on my lap. "It's hot." Her foot, my lap, in front of the entire cafeteria. A collective gasp came out of the crowd. I was pretty sure that the rest of my life was going to be a bitter disappointment, but at this point, I didn't care. 25. I went to my afternoon classes, but I was having dizzy spells. The touch of Bethany's foot was still burning on my leg. Principal Hughes interrupted the beginning of 7th period to state again, for the record, the details of the dress code. Everything interesting was banned, including bathing suit tops and t-shirts encouraging the consumption of alcohol, drugs, and promiscuous behavior. Acceptable clothing included pants that rode down above the belly button, t-shirts that reached down below the waist and had sleeves, and skirts and shorts long enough to make contact with the knee. Mrs. Harrison, my art teacher, spent the rest of the class talking about the beauty of the human body and showing us a PowerPoint presentation on the Botticelli and Rubens paintings. And in U.S. government, Mr. Clark hammered home the notion of self-determination and representation. The buzz caused by nearly naked girls and Bethany Milbury's foot was gone by the end of the day, destroyed by my teachers. I was nut-deep in homework alligators and I needed help. I needed a Jedi Master of George Washington High, Calvin, gifted and way talented Hodges. But he was not at his car. I went to the field hockey practice, not there either. I checked the parking lot again and then the AV room. No Yoda. Then I heard it. Yoda had a very distinct scream. He was in the locker room. "26. The lights were off, but I could make out 5 of them standing in a circle in the locker bay. They were all skinny, zit-faced sophomores in shorts and shoulder pads. One glanced up at me as I walked in, sizing me up. Crap. I normally would have snuck out at that point, pretended I'd made a mistake, phoned in the assault from the lobby. Yoda would have understood. I'd done it before. He'd done it before. Except I couldn't. I'd switched into Game Maker mode. No thoughts, no conscience, no heart, no consequences, no stopping. I was left with 3 abilities: breathing, swearing, and pounding JV jerks into submission. "What the hell are you doing?" I barked in my brand new 350-pound NFL linebacker voice. 5 faces looked my way. "Get lost," said the biggest one, who was still smaller than me. His name was Parker. He had been at the Milburys' party. "Maybe we should go," said a henchman. I stormed toward them. They all stepped backwards and the circle broke. At the center of the locker bay was a bench, the bench you put your sneakers on when you're tying them. Yoda was lying across that bench, his wrists tied together with duct tape. His jeans and boxers had been yanked down. His butt cheeks had been taped together too. He kept his head down. "Breathe. Just breathe. Just keep breathing. And kill the first thing you get your hands on." "All right, party's over," I said with more control than I was feeling. Parker got in my face. "We're just getting started, and I don't remember inviting you." "You have 2 seconds to disappear." "Get lost, nerd boy," spit Parker. The henchmen stepped back from into the circle. One of them smacked Yoda with a wet towel. Yoda grunted in pain, trying to hold in the sound. The jerk with the towel laughed, a high-pitched squeal, just like a jackal. I snapped. I picked up the front of Parker's shoulder pads and lifted him off the ground and slammed him against the locker. His eyes went wide. The henchman froze, confused. I pulled him toward me and shoved him into the metal doors again. Parker fumbled, trying to get some leverage so that he could hit me. I slammed him harder. I was going to do this over and over and over and over and over until I drove a Parker-sized hole through the locker and then the locker beyond that, and then all the way until I broke through the outside of the building. "Hey!" someone yelled in a voice not far away. "Put him down!" The air split with light as the door from the playing fields opened and Chip Milbury walked in, helmet in hand. "What's going on?" he yelled. I took a deep breath and let go of Parker, who stumbled forward. "Ask him," I said. Parker quickly explained that Yoda was bothering them because he thinks he can be our manager. I kept my back to the lockers and slid a few steps closer to Yoda. I knelt down next to him and quickly unwrapped the tape that tied his wrists. As Yoda pushed himself off the bench, I reached out for his arm. He brushed me off and pulled his jeans up over his butt without removing the tape. He zipped his fly and buckled his belt. His eyes never left the floor. "And you think this is cool?" Chip said to Parker. "You think this is funny?" "Yeah," Parker said. "Don't you?" Chip licked his lips and glanced around quickly. "Yeah." He play punched Parker's arm. Stupid, but funny. Then he turned to me. You got a problem with that? Yeah, I do, I said. He was offering to help, and these little shits jumped him. My voice was getting louder. 5-on-1, I yelled. 5-on-1. You're all freaks, you know that? Chip stepped closer to my face. That's a good one, you calling somebody a freak. It occurred to me that the odds were now 6-on-1, and since Yoda was useless in a fight, that one was me. Got anything else to say? Chip asked. The only sound in the locker room was Yoda breathing hard, trying not to sniff. Out in the hall, a couple of girls giggled, their flip-flops smacking the ground. In the distance, coaches' whistles were blowing. Chip Milbury and his friends were about to give me the beating of my life. I had nothing to lose. Chicken, I said. What? He was confused. You're a chicken, I said. A coward. Chip forced a laugh. And you're a lot dumber than I thought you were. More silence. This was when they were supposed to jump me, hold me down, and take turns kicking me. But Chip just chewed the inside of his cheek, and Parker had worked his way to the back of the crowd, rubbing his head where it had made solid contact with the lockers. Aren't you going to flatten him? One of the guys asked Chip. Chip hesitated. This is the wrong place, he said. I had him. Chip was afraid to take me on because there was a chance he'd lose in front of all of his boys. He hadn't forgotten who'd actually won the arm wrestling match. Brack, I said. Hit him, Parker said. Chip's eyes darted around the room. He wanted to piss his pants. I could smell it. I had won. I had leveled up. I was a giant freaking killer, and they all knew it. He's not going to hit me. I was growing taller and stronger by the second. I'll hit him back harder, won't I, Parker? Two of the JVs drifted to the door and looked outside. Chip kept one eye on them and the other on me. I'm not going to hit you because we're in school and I'm not stupid enough to do anything here. Not even if I ask nicely. Not even if I say pretty please. Yeah, that was taunting. But I was desperate for Chip to take a swing at me so I could unleash a decade's worth of rage on his ass. Chip turned to his dwarves. Get back to the field. As they trooped outside, he pointed to me with his helmet. Watch yourself, Miller. Anytime you want, Chipper, I said. Any place. 27. As we drove home, I kept flashing back to the locker room and replaying the scene obsessively. Me opening the door, me taking control, me flattening Parker, me challenging Chip. What was I thinking? They could have killed me. They could have killed both of us. Temporary insanity was the only explanation. Yoda didn't want to talk about it. He kept his eyes nailed to the road in front of the car the whole ride. When we got to his driveway, I did not help him out of his seat. He would have tried to punch me if I did. Then he would have missed. Then he would have felt like an even bigger loser. But I carried his backpack and followed him into his house just in case he needed something. How are you going to get it off? I asked. Yoda was a hairy guy, if you catch my drift. His bangs fell in his face. Just leave me alone, okay? Go home. I was halfway to the front door when he called, Wait! I stopped. What? Don't tell Hannah. Of course not. Thanks. You want a soda? I walked back down the hall to the kitchen. We armed ourselves with food and retreated to the basement to do something mind-numbing. Yoda wanted to watch Star Wars Episode 3 again. I wanted to watch Spider-Man. We compromised and watched the hot blonde on the Weather Channel talk about the highs and lows and tropical storms ready to wreak havoc. We drank black cherry soda and ate Doritos. We didn't talk about football or duct tape or sisters or fathers or crime or punishment. He didn't want to talk about that time in the 7th grade I had my face pushed into the toilet, or when he used to get chased home from school, or when we both used to hand over our lunch money so we wouldn't get beaten up, or the plans we used to make to get back at the bullies, or how weird all of this was because I had picked up that kid Parker off the ground and slammed him into a locker. We didn't talk about what it felt like when they held him down, or how hard he fought against crying, or how close I came to killing Chip Milbury, or if he even needed help getting the tape off, because we both know that if he asked, I'd do it. I'd never talk about it again. We didn't talk about any of it. Instead, we talked about the odds about whether or not the weather babe's boobs were real. When his mother asked if I was staying for dinner, I said no. I had to go home. Yoda said he'd take care of the Paradise Lost essay for me. He had read it for fun and loved it. Before I left, I told him it was cool for him to go out with Hannah. 28. It was in the shower that night when I remembered what I wanted to tell Mom. I jumped out, wrapped a towel around my waist, and hustled down the hall. She was sitting on top of the quilt that covered her bed, laptop in front of her, pen tucked behind her ear, reading glasses at the end of her nose. The family calendar was next to her, and CNN was on the TV, muted, the tragedies of the day scrolling across the bottom of the screen. She looked up. Run out of soap? What? No. You know that shirt you got me, the red one, that I wore today? She pushed her glasses up into her hair. You're dripping on my carpet. I need more of those shirts, like 20 of them. You want me to buy you new clothes? Just get me the shirt. Promise, I really need them. Fine. I'll get the shirts. You want some pants to go with them? Yeah, but only if they're hot. Not Mom hot, just ask some girl at the store. Make sure she's good looking. Or take Hannah with you. Hot. Exactly. I turned to go. Hang on, she said. I'm dripping on your carpet, I pointed out. Does this have anything to do with Bethany? Bethany who? Nice try. Your sister told me. I tightened the towel around my waist. Bethany who? She nodded. Okay, we'll pretend you don't like her. One more thing. She picked up the calendar. Don't forget to meet with Mr. Benson after school tomorrow. And we're scheduled for Christmas card photos on Friday. No way. We're too old for that. I've got the last slot, 5 o'clock with David Gunnarsson. He's a genius, an expensive genius, so we will not be late. We'll just leave at 4:15. Do you know where your sweatshirt is? I shivered. She had the air conditioning cranked up again. The one with the reindeer. It won't fit. The plural of reindeer is reindeer. No S. You swam in that shirt last year. It'll be fine. But you wanted me to go shopping for new clothes. Something Bethany would like? What was the word you used? Hot? The question hung there. CNN reported on the rise in the stock market. Green arrows were everywhere. Okay. I held the towel, leaned forward, and kissed her on the cheek. 4:15 Friday. Reindeer. Thanks, Mom. 29. When Yoda picked us up on Wednesday, he was sitting on a large pillow covered in a Jimmy Neutron pillowcase. I didn't say anything. My sister was too distracted to ask any questions. Yoda stared at Hannah's field hockey uniform. You look amazing. Hannah looked into the little mirror as she drew the lines of thick black grease under each eye. We have a game this afternoon. Yoda shifted into drive. I know. I'll be there. She capped the tube and tugged at her skirt. Did you know that this skirt violates the dress code? It's 4 inches too short. You should protest. Hold a rally. Tell me about it, she said. It's hypocritical fascism. You don't even know what fascism means, I said. Fascism is a totalitarian worldview that supports the state or the school in controlling all aspects of personal life, Hannah said. I learned that yesterday. It's just a dress code, I said. Hannah picked up a piece of lint off of her skirt. Principal Hughes should read about how well fascism worked for Mussolini. Yoda smiled at her in the rearview mirror. You have him cornered. You've lost your mind, I said. 30. When I walked into homeroom, Chip Milbury acted like I didn't exist. That was a good thing. Bethany did too. That was bad. But she was busy handing tissues to Stacy Peters, who had just been dumped, so I forgave her. When the bell rang, I dropped my notebook so the papers would scatter all over. This made me late to class, but it guaranteed that Chip would be in front of me. One-on-one I could handle. Chip Milbury was no problem. But Chip had an army on his side. I was still the slightly weird kid who only had one friend. As my calculus teacher yelled at me for being late, I realized I needed to work out again. My hard-earned landscaping muscles were beginning to melt. I'd start doing push-ups. I'd run. Maybe Bethany would let me pick her up and practice lifting. I'd have to phrase that just right so she didn't hit me. I was called down to the principal's office at the beginning of second period. Mr. Hughes looked terrible. All the buttons on his phone were blinking red. His walkie-talkie lay on the desk, crackling. When the secretary showed me in, she reminded him that he had a meeting with the superintendent in 5 minutes. "We're keeping this short," he said, after the door had closed. "My spies tell me there was an altercation in the boys' locker room yesterday after school." Chip certainly did have an army. Mr. Hughes had a spy network. I needed to beef up my recruitment efforts. "Were you a part of that altercation?" he continued. "No," I said, happy to tell the truth. "The altercation was the attack on Yoda. I was part of the aftermath. A technicality, perhaps, but an important one." "You sure?" "Did someone see me there? Did someone file a complaint?" He stared at me for a full minute. The seconds dragged on the clock behind him like the hands were stuck in tar. "No," he finally admitted, tapping a piece of paper on his desk. "I'm required to report any trouble you get into to your probation officer." I nodded. "I'll be seeing him this afternoon, sir. Should I have him call you?" Another half-minute of silence. Then, "No, but your grades are not what we would have hoped for." How was I supposed to answer that? I kept my eyes on him and focused on blinking regularly, but not too much so I wouldn't look like a liar or a cheat. "You're walking a fine line here, Tyler. You don't have any room for errors." Blink. "Yes, sir. I know that, sir." "I don't want to hear any more rumors about you. You keep your nose clean." "I'll try my best, sir." I sniffed and wiped my nose on my sleeve. He didn't notice. Bethany sat with us at lunch again. She did not put her foot on my lap, but she did have the choice between sitting next to me or Hannah, and she chose to sit next to me. Her arm bumped mine 4 times. After lunch, I sniffed my sleeve. It smelled like her. I wanted to strip and rub it all over me, but the lunch ladies were already giving me funny looks.